Good afternoon, everybody.
They didn't use their government.
I am Gil Cedillo, Chair of the Housing Committee. Today is Wednesday, January 23rd, 2019. Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy Martin Luther King birthday. Happy today. We have a quorum. I'm joined by my colleague, Councilmember Marquise Harris-Dawson. Mr. Krikorian will be joining us shortly, sometime into the meeting. We have a full agenda, but before we start, I just want to thank all of you for being here. I really do appreciate your commitments and your efforts to make this a greater city, make sure that we have housing for everyone, and that this is a place that everybody can realize their right to housing. People can be prosperous, and we could have shared prosperity. I want to share with you that I just recently got back from a humanitarian effort to take aid to refugees at the border, and I was very impressed by the incredible challenges that people have and the spirit of people to come to this city and to this country to improve their lives. As bad as we have it, it's just a relative perspective. There are people who have greater challenges than us. They shouldn't, but they do, and it just gives us a sense of proportionality. It gives me a sense of proportionality and a sense of perspective. I have not seen all of you for a while, and so I want everyone to feel comfortable that we will have public comment. Everybody has a right to speak, and that right will be respected. You will get your full time. We are not in a hurry. Choose to make your comments as you wish, and
Voting on that?
Chair prerogative. Chair prerogative. We will listen to all of you. I am here, and I have no other schedule for today other than spending my afternoon with you. So thank you for being here, and I mean that for everyone who is here. And I think that's it. Any Happy New Year's? Any new statements?
Happy New Year. Look forward to helping the chair complete our business in an efficient and
Effective.
time-sensitive manner.
And justice is always timely, I heard someone once say.
It's always time to do the right thing.
It's always time to do the right thing, and it's never late. With that, Mr. Herman, you want to join us?
He's going to read his thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have rules that need to be read into the record, and so that people all get notice. Mr. Herman.
Thank you.
So you
Mr.
want to
Chair.
come up?
So as the first committee meeting for 2019 starts, I'd like to begin by taking a moment to remind everyone in the audience that some new council and committee rules have come into effect. The new rules state that a member of the audience who disrupts multiple council or committee meetings may be excluded from future meetings for one or more days. The number of days increases with the number of disruptions. The exact rules are available on the city's website, and they're summarized on a poster board in the back of the room. I'd like to make clear that the new rules do not address the comment of speakers' remarks. Instead, the rules are designed to prevent repeated actual disruptions of council and committee meetings. I hope the new rules will help the council and committee meetings run more efficiently to complete the city's business, and they will allow us to have as many members of the public as possible to present their comments to their elected representatives in an orderly manner. And thank you for letting me read that into the record and let everybody in the audience know about the new rules.
So ordered.
So noted. Wayne, you want to come up? And Michael, it's your pleasure if you would like to come up and join us. Do I have another seat? I have 4 mics. Do I have 4 seats up there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right here. Who else?
Wow, we're getting directions. Look at this. Very good. That's good. Thank you, Mr. Weezer.
Please proceed.
So, ladies and gentlemen, relative to the anti-tenant harassment ordinance, I'd like to reflect on the record to the city attorney, Mike Fuhrer, and racist motherfucker. And to those in local government who've used strategic lawsuits against the public to remove us from our properties simply for engaging in public testimony like I'm doing so today under 54950, the Ralph M. Brown Act. Incidentally, in my anti-tenant harassment, Jose Huizar, a wetback from Zacatecas, came into my country to violate my civil rights when I was removed from my rent control home and put into the Metropolitan Hotel for 5 motherfucking nights while I slept there in fear of my life. You think I really care? Fuck you, I do. And so in the report of designating the city own Los Angeles Department of Transportation, in which I participated with Mr. Bonin the Chango and his son, who was unavailable for comment with me, I brought to the attention that parking lots are for homeless people, homie. That's right. We're going to put tentative housing on property that are deemed parking lots. What the fuck's wrong with you all? HHH, Measure 2, and all these fucking bonds and grants that you, the public, are paying to house a little white nigger like me to live happy forever? I'm not living in the goddamn street. I'm living in the ghetto. Because as you heard in my testimony, Jose Huizar put me in the motherfucking street with development. Now, as far as my general public comment, I like to imply that Wayne Spindler's Department of Justice injunction against the city of Los Angeles is in conditions of motion Rule 77 as brought to you by, for the record, Mr. Fauble, the city attorney, as he addressed you to the rules. Well, in my category and in my mind, as I try to speak and think, I want you to be aware that Rule 7 doesn't impact me or affect me. Because I am above the rules. Fuck the rules of the city of Los Angeles, because I only comply to federal law, 42 U.S.C. and the 14th Amendment. Fuck you. And when you turn your back on me, motherfucker, I'm going to apply Council Rule 63 all the time. Fuck you.
Mr. Herman, thank you very much.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So I noticed that Marquise Harris, now known as Marquise Huizar Dawson, got his chair turned 180 degrees so that I see the back of his head. You notice that, everybody? He get paid $183,000 a year, the new chair, because he got to turn his head and not face the speaker when he's speaking on his time. Now, why is that? Why he turning his head? And the reason he's turning his head...
You might want to focus on a subject matter.
It is, Mr. Chair. You got to tell this player that he got to play. You got to turn that chair around and play, because you're the chairman of Plum now. You're the new Huizar. You Huizar 2.0.
Mr. Spindler, you may want to focus on a...
we got Huizar 1.0, now we got the 2.0. And the 2.0, he's got his hands in that cookie jar called campaign donations. And that's why everything in this city is just fucked up to no end. Because you have HHH, they're not building nothing. I go to all the meetings in the HHH. And then what do? They got FBI agents attending the meetings for the past year and a half. They got FBI agents in the parking lots. They got FBI agents across the street videotaping, recording, and following all your fucking staff. And they know you're stealing the fucking money, and that's why you got your head fucking turned. Face the taxpayer and tell us where the money is. Why are the tents underneath the 110 freeway? Why are you taking people out of CD14 and shoving them into the 1st District where we can't even park our cars in Koreatown? Because it's pay to play. The money's there. There shouldn't be a single tent on the streets. The money's there. But the money's not getting to the people. It's getting to the Chinese developers. It's in Shanghai. That's where our money is. And that's why I don't want to turn the chair around. You don't want to turn the chair around. Well, how about this? FBI, now you turn the chair. You don't want to talk about that. You don't want to do the job. So step the fuck down and resign. You don't have to do the job.
You're in your
You
public
can
comment
give
now.
me the job. You can have me on the council. I'll show you where the money is. I'll get the money. I'll build the housing. Because the reason I'll do it is because I don't have to steal my fucking way to something. I got enough intelligence to know how to make money without stealing from the fucking taxpayers. And that's all that's going on here. We want the money. Get these tents off the streets. Get these people into affordable housing at once within the next 90 days and turn the chair around. Because you know what? When you don't see something, you ain't watching it and you ain't learning nothing. See? So that's why. Now you
Thank
see
you,
they
Mr.
bought him his
Spindler.
little drink.
Thank you, Mr. Spindler.
Is he going to see? He's in, turning around.
Michael?
Oh, there he
Spindler?
goes. Yeah.
Choo-choo! I am the Red Chief Hunt. And let me tell you guys this. The rules in the back are unconstitutional. And they're very much unconstitutional. Free speech is welcome, but putting people out of the room is not. And I don't care how many
hold the clock for a
violations they
second?
said. Dean Pragerson said it in the Dow versus.
You want to hold the clock for a second? So I think he needs three. You're doing specific item and public comment. You get 3 minutes.
Well, oh, yeah. I'm just because he
Iterated.
the Constitution back there, and the laws are still
But
constitutional.
I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Do you want 3 minutes or you want just one on the public comment?
You can give me 3.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're
All
going to
right. And then I want to get into what we're talking about, and I want to echo some sentiments. The money is not getting down to the community for housing and things like that. There shouldn't be nobody sleeping in tents. Out of $365 million that's coming down and things like that, the city of Los Angeles didn't pre-plan to actually develop housing for this, and they knew it was coming down. So partially it's our fault. The city of Los Angeles need to come up to speed. They need to do a better job at what they're doing. Number 2, you guys, listening is the key to understanding. Understanding is the key why we put you guys in office. I mean, this is, without us, you guys wouldn't be sitting right there. So I want to echo those sentiments again. And then, a little bit of public comment. Everybody needs a good and fair landlord, and I speak this without harassment. All of these people coming here, they don't want to be harassed by their landlords, and I totally agree. I am the Red Chief Hunt, and I am a 9th Circuit winner, and I have done a lot of things in Los Angeles to make achievement for the public.
Thank you, sir. Right here. Michael Fucci, Daniel Garcia, and Susan Hunter. You are, sir?
I'm sorry?
Who are you?
My name is Michael Fucci.
Okay, hold on. Daniel Hunter?
Daniel Garcia.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Top.
Daniel Garcia. I will not say anything else other than Daniel Garcia, please come make your way. Okay. Michael.
Hi, my name is Mike Fucci. I live in Councilman Harris Dawson's district. I am a property manager, so I have the perspective of the tenant as well as the owner. The owners that we represent are very mom and pop small operators. And you should know that we're not against Section 8 tenants per se, but we're against the process that hurts small businesses. It's been our experience that dealing with a Section 8 tenant takes longer than dealing with a regular tenant and has an adverse effect on a small operator. Our small operators work 9 to 5 jobs, and they use these income-producing properties to subsidize their retirement or their income. I feel that in order for us to go down this road, that we really need to take into consideration the small-time operators, and not all corporations and LLCs are large. A lot of the smaller operators have to go incorporate and become an LLC to protect themselves personally. This is a really big problem that we drive through, and it's in every district. It has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. And, as a property manager, I want to be part of the solution and help out in any way that we can to provide proper perspective.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Susan?
I just need 1 minute. Actually, I'm going to
Sorry,
do
go
additional
ahead.
1 minute on each other comment or card. Susan Hunter, Los Angeles Tenants Union, Hollywood local caseworker. We've had an issue with people receiving increased bills for things like trash and water because we need that codified under RSO that anything that cannot be metered should be built into the rental charge. So people that don't know better, when they get a $250 bill for their water, will just pay it because they don't understand that that would be an unlawful rent increase. Also, it would be helpful if the city could clarify right of return. We have developers who are kind of throwing that term around, and what it is actually a bunch of hurdles that the tenant will have to go through to try and regain possession of a unit after construction of new development. So it would be helpful if the law was actually representative of right of return as it is described under THP. And I just want to clarify, so I just got the 1 minute, correct?
Go
So
ahead.
Look at 1 minute on
Just
each
go ahead.
other.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Are you done, Susan?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Michael, Daniel?
Thank you. Can I have 3 minutes? Can I have 3 minutes?
Sure, no problem.
I'm Daniel Garcia, system change advocate for Calais. And I'm here to give you information about our center and also to give you a little bit of thing that from my past experiences at the city council. Yeah, it's for everybody. It's for everybody. And I want to say that for the last 10 years and a half, 10 years more, I have been warning you at the city council level, okay, that there's not enough housing. There's not enough affordable and accessible housing. There was almost 0% of affordability, affordable accessible housing in the land. There was no movement whatever until you got sued by my company. Okay? My company sued you for not being able to follow up for affordable and accessible housing. And you won. Now you're obligated to build affordable housing and affordable and accessible housing. You are mandated by court, by the federal court, to build affordable and accessible housing. Now, by saying that, the item number 1 that you put there is the business is 50 units. From that, there's no indication whatsoever on the unit of affordable and accessible housing. Not even accessible housing in the whole unit. What I want to know from you guys, especially, is how many units are going to be accessible? Yeah. If you can send me a letter to my office, I'll be sure everything for the information. So you got my information, you got everything there. So please let me know. Also, I want to say that I'm running for city council for my 12th district area. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Who else is there? Is that it on the public comment? No, we don't have to. We'll start clearing out the calendar. All right, so number one, we're going to reschedule or continue that item. No objection. Item number 2, 3, 4, and 7 on consent. Unless anyone has a comment on those items. Anybody have comments on items 2, 3, 4, or 7? Move those items on consent.
Mr. Chair, on item number 4, our office has a technical amendment to the report to amend recommendation number 3 that the position be for the Public Policy and Research Unit, not the Housing Bureau.
Okay.
It's in the CLA report.
For the, can you repeat the section?
Recommendation number 3 in the CLA report.
No, I mean, but what department instead of the...
In the policy unit of the Housing Department instead of the Housing Bureau Department.
That's very niche micromanagement. I think we're going to vote on that. I got that. Okay, so amendment accepted. Items move on consent, items 2, 3, 4, and 7, which brings us to item number 5.
Item number 5, Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles report relative to protecting affordable housing opportunities for renters utilizing rental assistance or other sources of income as payment.
Public comment on 5? Okay, item number 5. Let's hear first. First, or you want to do public comment? Okay. Okay. Excuse me, we have some accommodations that we have to make, so I need to hear item 6 first. HCID report relative to the adoption of an anti-tenant harassment ordinance.
Item
Go ahead.
Item number 6, HCIDLA report relative to the adoption of an anti-tenant harassment ordinance.
Then we'll do public comment from there. First or after? Okay. So we have 48 speakers on item 6. You're all welcome to come up and take your 1 minute. Although if you believe your points have been well stated, that is a choice and a discretion. I'm prepared now to start calling people up to speak on item number 6 on the question of anti-tenant harassment. Let's start with Carlos Aguilar. I saw you here. Carlos. Linda Cunningham. Carol Citron. Linda, you want to come up and join us? Carol Citron. And Lois DeArmond. Lois? Don't say anything. Okay. So he's got a good hour now, 30 minutes. Okay. Have they left the room? No. Right. Is he going to leave the room? Okay. All right. Carlos, please go forward.
Thank you. Carlos Aguilar, Coalition for Economic Survival. CES supports this ordinance, which is long overdue and a good first step. We're glad to see the recommendations to prohibit the removal of parking accommodations that has been provided to tenants, as well as those that prohibit unwarranted refusal to acknowledge or accept receipts of lawfully paid rents. CES has advocated for this for over the years, seeing it's a huge landlord harassment tool. We'd also like to suggest some additions to this list, such as checks on removals of an on-site resident manager where required by state law that delays repair requests even further, as well as adding deterrents to arbitrary and continuous changes to dates of return to tenants to their units under THPs who are entitled to the return within a reasonable time. As of now, these are laws and procedures that tenants have little ability to enforce. And enforcement is key. Unless there's adequate funding and staffing to enforce this law, it will be meaningless. Thus, we urge adoption of this ordinance with a heavy emphasis on a commitment to ensure it's enforced. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda?
Who? Who's
Evelyn
next?
Cunningham?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Linda K. Cunningham, and I live at 1200 West 37th Place. I have been there for the last 6 years, and I moved downstairs because it's a 3-story building. I moved downstairs to the 2nd floor, but as a result, my landlord and them decided they want to change tenancies. They want to put 2 students in there and make more money. So as a result, they've been coming up with about 4 or 5 different notices, and all of them have been invalid, okay? None of them have went through with the housing. Housing has sent them letters saying all these notices are invalid. As a result, I've been having to deal with landlady's husband, and he's been doing all these tactics as far as trying to get me to move without any relocation fee. And so what he did is he took my cat and he gave my cat away. And my cat was an emotional support animal on December 4th. And then he goes into my drawer, he enters my room illegally, and he got out my graduation key. I mean, not my key, my ring and stuff. So these are his tactics of saying, well, if I do all this stuff, maybe you'll move on your own. But right now we're in the process of going through court backwards and forth about 3 or 4 times.
Thank you. That's been very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Citroni. I am a landlady. Somebody earlier called me a small-time operator who respects my tenants' rights to a peaceful, full enjoyment of the home they rent. The system works well for most landlord-tenant relationships. Their rent helps pay my bills, and my job is to create a safe and comfortable habitat. But for some, enough is never enough. Speculators buy rental properties with no respect for those that live there and with zero interest in any kind of stewardship that should accompany the role of a landlord. Their goal is to make the most profit possible by making tenants miserable, forcing them to leave or face unfair eviction. I started a tenants' rights committee because I've witnessed horrific examples of landlord abuse in the last few years. Decent, hardworking, honest tenants are suffering. The situation is dire. There are lots of people beyond this room who are watching and paying attention to what happens on this vote today. I urge you to take a stand to stop this abuse from landlords who profit from the misery of others, and I urge you to include both RSO and non-RSO as a matter of basic, decent human rights. Thank you.
Lois?
I believe you have my letter.
Okay.
Gave you all copies of my letter. I'm here in support of the ordinance. Harassment is a common tool used by landlords to circumvent the RSO protections tenants have by forcing them out of their homes by various means, including physical and verbal intimidation, destroying tenants' property, removal of rights granted in leases, such as parking, pet ownership, use of common areas, etc. This ordinance will help to protect more people from displacement, which is a huge problem in our city currently. We need to protect people from becoming unhoused by these unscrupulous practices. Harassment is aggression. It is no less than psychological violence, and we must create protections against it, not only for RSO units, but for all rental units in Los Angeles. My personal experience is as follows. I've lived in a duplex for over 14 years. The property was sold about 4 years ago. The new owner thought she was going to get my apartment by owner occupancy. I'm a protected tenant, so she couldn't do it. The harassment and abuse started right after that. She took away my parking, she took away my garden, she took away anything that made it pleasant living there. She tried to take away my cat.
Lois, we
Please
have the
read
letter.
the rest of my letter, and thank you.
Thank you for coming today. Appreciate it. Mark Simon, Leah Doyle, and Teresa Alfaro. Teresa Alfaro, Teresa Alfaro. And Teresa Reyes.
Here for Ms. Reyes.
You're Teresa Reyes?
No, this is Teresa Reyes. I'm here to translate.
Okay. So we have Teresa Reyes and Teresa Alfaro? Okay, so when she, Teresa Alfaro, we have a seat for you. When you're available, please come forward, unless anybody wants to go get her, but we'll save her a seat. Reyes? Sí.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Teresa Reyes.
Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Reyes.
Vivo en el Distrito 9.
I live in District 9
Mi esposo y mis dos hijos.
with my husband and my 2 children.
En el 2015 estoy sufriendo de hostigamiento. He sido golpeada 2 veces.
In 2015 is when the harassment started. That was when I was twice punched.
He sido golpeada 2 veces. He estado sufriendo de violencia física verbalmente, casi a diario, verbalmente.
I've been suffering verbal and physical abuse on a daily basis.
Quiero hablar también de 2 cosas que quisiera que incluyeran también en esta ley, las mascotas.
But I want you to speak about 2 particular issues that I'd like for you to include in this law. Firstly, pets.
Ya que he sufrido algo en mi persona con mis tortugas que me robaron. Sufrieron mucho mis hijos.
Give her another minute for the translation. Go ahead.
I've been suffering a lot for my own self and for my children. Our 3 turtles were stolen by our landlord.
También quisiera que pudieran, que las cámaras de los dueños también puedan servir para los inquilinos.
I'd also like for you to make the cameras that the landlords uses to spy on us to serve the purpose of the tenants as well.
También que sirva para la privacidad de donde uno está viviendo.
Because we should have a right to privacy where we live.
Eso es todo.
That's all.
Okay. Gracias. Gracias por su presencia. Gracias por venir. Okay. Francisca? Leah?
Hi, I'm Leah Doyle.
Hi, Leah
I'm
Doyle.
from District 9. I'm an artist that live and work in a loft since 2012. Harassment began when my building was sold to a new owner in 2016. He said that he doesn't want children, Latinos, blacks, or anyone that's on Section 8 living in the building. He threatened to call DCFS on a new mother if she didn't move, and when she didn't move, he called them. He called the services on her. My landlord refuses to pay relocation assistance for me to vacate the unit, and without that relocation assistance, I can't afford to move. He's resorted to making me feel uncomfortable and unwelcomed and threatened in my own home. The harassment includes he tried to change my locks. I caught him on top of a ladder looking inside of my window as I was coming home. He spreads rumors about me to my neighbors. He's even entered... Thank you.
Is your landlord's initials DT?
Beg your pardon?
I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here this afternoon.
Okay.
This is Trace Alfaro.
Sale, por favor.
Ok, mi nombre es Teresa Alfaro.
My name is Trace Alfaro.
Vivo en el 739 Sur Matthews por más de 20 años.
I've lived at 739 South Matthews for more than 20 years.
Ha entrado un nuevo dueño
There's been a new owner
que me ha tratado de desalojar,
who's tried to evict me,
que llega en cualquier momento a mi casa a hostigarme,
who will come at any time to my house to harass me.
sabiendo que mi esposo está enfermo, a él no le importa.
Even though he knows that my husband is sick, he doesn't care.
Me llega, me azota la puerta en todo momento.
He comes and he beats on my door at any time.
Y me dice palabras groseras.
And he tells me, he screams at me with foul language.
No tiene ningún respeto.
He doesn't have any respect for me.
Me gustaría que hubiera una ley que estos nuevos dueños no nos traten así, porque eso nos enferma.
I'd like to ask for a law to ensure that landlords can't treat us this way because that makes us sick.
Gracias.
¿Puede continuar todavía? Creo que nos dan un minuto más.
Complete.
Sí, ¿tenía algo más que decir?
Yo creo que nada más.
Okay, thank you.
Gracias.
Gracias por venir.
Mark Simon
Hello, Mark.
lives at Rodney Drive, had lived there for 19 years. Scappa Silverman buy the building. Within a week, they are knocking on all the tenants' doors, offering cash for keys. They didn't specify an amount. Every single person, it was an under-market building, but of course we'd all lived there comfortably I'd lived there for 19 years, as I said. Within weeks of that, before the month was out, we had to hire a lawyer because he started posting letters, which I have here, you're welcome to see. He wanted us all to remove our air conditioners, which had been installed by the former landlord. He wanted to remove all the security gates. He wanted us to stop storing things in the storage bins in the garage. We hired a landlord, and we got him to stop. We backed this bastard into a corner. Now, we all had to leave. We were Ellis. But you haven't heard the last of this building because now he's totally flaunting the Ellis Act, and we already have a case that will be happening in June because he totally re-tenanted the building within days of the last Ellis tenant leaving the building.
Thank you, Mark. Please keep us informed of your case. Lydia Nicholson, Francisca Esquida, Amy Williams, and Kenya Lada. Lydia Nicholson, Francisca Esquida, Amy Williams, Kenya Lara. Amy Williams, you're going to testify?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm a tenants' rights attorney. I work for Casablanca Law Group, a private firm. We only represent tenants. I'm also a member of the National Lawyers Guild. I brought two of my clients here today, Teresa and Leah, who you've already heard testify earlier. Those two clients who I've filed lawsuits on behalf of have continued to suffer harassment despite already having a civil attorney. Those two clients, the city attorney also has criminal charges against those two landlords. Between the civil and the criminal cases, we haven't been able to stop the harassment. Sometimes when we have a good day in court, the harassment actually increases. That's because there are very few legal deterrents in place for landlords who harass. So the most valuable part of this ordinance will be its deterrent effect. I implore you, please include a provision for a civil action with attorney's fees and costs. For many landlords, harassment is a cost-benefit analysis. Is it cheaper to harass the tenant to leave or to comply with health and housing codes? The attorney's fees and costs will also have a deterrent for tenants bringing frivolous lawsuits. Thank you for your time, but please work fast. Homelessness is a huge issue, and we've already been waiting 2 years. We need this law.
Thank you. Francisca?
Can we get 2 minutes for the interpretation? Thank you.
Yo vengo de la Marengo porque hubo la manager nueva que entró, duró mucho para
I come from Marengo Street because the new manager who came in took too long to...
que nos duró mucho para arreglar el departamento y mi esposo tiene diálisis y a mí me operaron para arreglar el departamento.
She took a long time to fix the apartment, and my husband is undergoing dialysis, and
Y mi esposo tiene diálisis y mi hija está enferma también.
my daughter is sick too.
Y ella dice que nos esperáramos y que nos esperáramos.
And she told us to wait and wait.
Y últimamente nos están hostigando mucho.
And recently she's been harassing us a lot.
Ahora hasta otros vecinos nos están bien de parte de ella, de parte de la manager, nos están
And me and 4 neighbors who have formed a tenants association are being harassed too by the manager.
y yo quiero que nos ayuden a que todo esté bien para vivir mejor que ahora.
I implore you to help us so that everything can be better. Everything can be better than it is now.
Sí. No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Kenya?
Hi, my name is Kenya, and what I came to tell you is I'm a bit concerned of what our landlord is doing to me and our family. They would come and take pictures and photographs of us all the time. They put about 11 security cameras all around our apartments to have them, I guess, surveillance who came inside and out from our apartments. Me and my siblings would get ready in the morning, said we would go to school, but the landlord would wait outside with cameras and start taking pictures of all of us. They would also wait in different cars and take pictures of my parents' license plates. And they would get my siblings and ask them questions like, oh, how long have we been living here? Who else comes inside our apartments? They would also shut down our water heaters, so we would have, me and my siblings and my whole family would take cold showers. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yes, identify yourself,
All
please.
right. Hi, my name is Lydia Nicholson. I'm a UCLA law student and a volunteer member of the LA Tenants Union. Through being in the LA Tenants Union, I've met many tenants who've been harassed by their landlords. Recently in Silver Lake, Stephen Taylor, a notorious terrible landlord, harassed tenants in a non-RSO building by sending construction workers throughout and outside their apartments at all hours of the day and night and leaving those apartments in very unsafe conditions. He gave those tenants eviction notices the day after they told him that they formed a tenants association. Had there been an anti-harassment ordinance, that family might still be in their home. At another building, that same landlord harassed a tenant to the point that he committed suicide. Another LA Tenants member has received repeated false eviction notices for non-payment of rent, even though she has paid her rent on time the entire time she has lived in that apartment. In LA, we have protections that hypothetically protect tenants from eviction, but without anti-harassment protections, those protections are meaningless. So I encourage you guys to pass this bill with language that protects tenants from all this different types of terrible harassment. Yeah, the city is watching you, so thank you.
Thank you. Cecilia Garcia, Sylvie Shane, Chris Neff, Altman, and David Quattrochi. Cecilia?
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Mi nombre es Cecilia García. Yo vengo de la Soto y la Primera.
My name is
Vivo en el
Cecilia Garcia.
114.
My name is Cecilia Garcia, and I come from Soto and First. I live in 114.
Yo vengo porque tenemos mucho acoso con los nuevos dueños que hay ahí en la propiedad que se vendió.
I come because we have a lot of harassment from the new landlords who have bought the property.
Es mucho acoso el que nos dan de todos los días que va el nuevo dueño a estar hostigando, mucho hostigamiento.
He comes every day to harass us.
Y yo le digo que ya pare con tanto hostigamiento porque como yo tengo cáncer,
And I keep telling him to
le
stop
digo que
harassing
me
us
está
because
enfermando más,
even though I have
más.
cancer, he's making me more and more sick.
que dice que él es el nuevo dueño y todo eso y está puro acoso todos los días está yendo.
He says he's the new landlord, and he comes and harasses us every day. Every day he's there to annoy us.
Nomás vengo a pedirles que nos apoyen, que le pongan también un poquito que nos apoyen a nosotros también.
And I come to ask you to support us so that you can make a law that will support us too.
Es todo.
Thank you.
Sylvie Shane.
Good afternoon. My name is Sylvie Shane, and I was the last remaining tenant and the only one to return to a 50-unit building in Hollywood called Villa Carlotta after we were evicted under the Ellis Act. And the reason why I was the only one is because we were subjected to 4 years of a vigorous course of harassment that was designed to get us to relinquish our tenancies. And so I want to testify to the systematic nature that property owners engage in order to get rid of their tenants, and they dangle cash for keys, but at the same time, I mean, they're hitting them with a stick. So it's a little bit of a hostage negotiation. And I just want to say that as far as the proposal, a law is only as good as the enforcement mechanism. We need substantial penalty provisions for all the aspects of this to work, because that's the only thing that's going to make it enforceable. And it needs to apply to RSO and non-RSO to give tenants a fighting chance. Thank you.
Thank you. David, for the record. For the record, David.
Yes, I'm David Quattrochi. I come here as a member of the Democratic Socialists of America and also the LA Tenants Union, but primarily as a tenant, and hoping to lift up tenants here. So I think in this you have an opportunity to address that gray area between where a business and people actually trying to live intersect, because the people here, if we're going to treat housing like an enterprise, we would be the customers as tenants. So where does harassment come from? The complaints have to come from the tenants. And we have to define harassment as such. So you have to base harassment, your definition on this, by what the tenants are saying today. It can't just be some loose definition. Because harassment is a sign of intent to evict. So these things lead people, they live in this gray area where they're afraid to function. So eliminate that and define harassment by what they're saying, and don't leave it gray so it can be exploited the other way.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chrysanthi Altman. I'm a member of the LA Tenants Union, and I'm also a tenant. Becoming a caseworker, I've learned how to help tenants and support tenants, and one of the main questions when tenants are facing harassment is, how is this not illegal? How do I not have legal rights? So this is a way to correct that. I've met with tenants who've been faced with fumigation, and that fumigation was never even carried forth, so it was used as a tactic. Tenants who were harassed in construction by construction workers and by continuous construction. So I just urge you that this is long overdue. I know that the nature of City Hall is to wait and make sure we get all the information. I'm urging you to make a choice to approve this now. The details can be figured out, but we need this now. And finally, please consider including non-RSO tenants. We do not need two separate classes. They deserve the same protections as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyler Anderson, John Walton, Renee Christian Moya, and Adriana Sandoval, John Walton Center Fit.
Tyler.
Where's Tyler? Tyler and Adriana.
Adriana's on her way. She's in the overflow.
Okay.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. My name.
Hold on.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Ready? Go ahead, Tyler.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. My name is Tyler Anderson. I'm co-director of the Los Angeles Center for Community Law and Action, a nonprofit organization that provides free legal services to low-income tenants and landlords. I'm here today on behalf of LACLA membership, including the over 30 LACLA tenants, primarily monolingual Spanish speakers, that have been here today speaking before you. LACLA strongly supports both agenda item number 6 and agenda item number 5, but we specifically support number 6. We want the ordinance to pass today, and we support it as written, but we think it should be strengthened. In particular, LACLA believes that the ordinance should cover all tenants, that the ordinance should include a catch-all provision that will cover other forms of harassment not enumerated in the ordinance. We would recommend that the council look at Civil Code Section 526.7B3, which contains such a catch-all provision for the state law analog for harassment in civil harassment proceedings. And finally, that the law should prohibit repeated cash for keys offers within a 6-month period if the tenant says that they no longer want to they do not want a cash for keys deal. Thank you.
Thank you. John Walton.
Yes, Walt Centerfit from the LA Tenants Union. Thank you for bringing this to our to the council, and we support it moving forward. Over 100,000 tenants have been forced out of their homes since we first brought this to you 2 years ago. So it should be passed with expedition, but it should also be strengthened. Add to some lists the specific list that we've mentioned, including protecting the right to organize, the right to privacy against undue surveillance, pets and property protected, against repeated cash for keys offers, and the other specifics. Add those to the specific list plus the catch-all that Tyler just suggested. Also, we need to make this enforceable by tenants being able to take the action. So we support the clarification of it being the private bar and other nonprofit lawyers being able to initiate civil actions with costs and fees covered if the tenant prevails. And finally, make it apply to all tenants, not just multi-unit housing, but all tenants, period, in RSO and non-RSO. Thank you.
Renee?
First off, I'd like to thank the council for bringing this motion forward. I think it's about time. My name is Renee Moya. I'm a member of the LA Tenants Union, and I'm also the director of Housing as a Human Right. I strongly support this ordinance, though I believe that it needs to be strengthened with more severe penalties for violations, and it must include tenants under both RSO and non-RSO buildings. And I'm going to mention a few violations that I've seen in both instances. Unfortunately, at the moment, far too many instances of harassment are ignored by authorities, or they're treated as interpersonal disputes by the police when they are called to mediate between landlords and tenants. In Councilman Harris Dawson's district, we've seen tenants who have had their utilities shut off. We've seen their possessions being thrown out. We've seen cameras installed to be able to point straight to the doors of the tenants to harass them. We've seen broken elevators for months, stranding disabled tenants. We've seen workers going to harass the individual tenants and telling them that they are going to be evicted anyway, so they might as well not complain. In Councilman Cedillo's district, at the moment, I have 40 units at the moment where folks are being harassed through jackhammer violations. They've been given lack of notices before people have entered their units, constant visits by the landlord. Many utilities have been turned on and off at will, and multiple cash for keys offers have been given. So we think this is urgent and vital, and we hope that it's passed for both tenants under RSO and non-RSO, as these tenants have both been. Thank you.
Adriana Sandoval, please.
Hi, I'm here to give my testimony. We really need protection. The landlords usually come to the house and knock on the doors. They send different men to give us orders or the cards because my apartment was in very bad condition, and when we complained, they didn't fix it. We withheld rent, and instead of helping us or fixing the apartment, they keep on sending letters with different people knocking on my door at any time of the day, all day. 3-4 times a week, and it was just nerve-wracking. I have children. With the situation that it is right now, it's just impossible. Instead of fixing the apartment right there, they rather send people to harass us or to try to kick us out. We just need to find a place to live. You know, we can't afford other places, and this needs to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Dagan Bayless, Lisa Hart, Chancellor Amasur, and Gabriel Latiglaca.
Good afternoon. My name is Dagan Bayless. I'm with SAGE and also a member of the Renters Day LA Coalition. And I'd like to thank you also for bringing this forward. We strongly support the anti-harassment measure, especially feeling that it's very timely as it comes while the city is also considering right to counsel. We believe these two programs will enhance each other. We have a specific addition which some people have alluded to. We hope that the ordinance will also include some of the landlord's agents who often carry out harassment. In some instances, we've found that this can even include relocation contractors working for the city who have an effective conflict of interest because they wish that the tenants would leave. That's their role. So we want to make sure that all of these different agents, building managers, relocation consultants, and so on, be covered by this. And we also feel this is timely because it comes together while the city is considering RSO's study. And we hope that we are eager to work with the city to expand and strengthen rent control protections at Just Cause. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Hart.
Hi, I'm a landlord. I own property in Oregon, and I'm a renter here in Los Angeles. I've lived in my Silver Lake apartment since 2009, and my landlord is harassing me. It's included threats of eviction, an illegal eviction attempt, and a ceiling that leaks during rainstorms. He's trying to evict me as I speak here today. I'm happy to submit documents into the record if that's helpful. I understand that in theory, under California law, I have the right to the quiet enjoyment of my own home, but my landlord has done everything in his power to make that really tough. And until we have this anti-harassment law, I don't think I'm going to experience that quiet enjoyment. And frankly, the fact that so many other cities in California have this law and that we don't makes me wonder what's up. I wish we lived in a world in which this law weren't necessary, but I don't live in that world. I do want to say that I'm so grateful for the laws that you do have. The Housing and Community Investment Department has been such a lifesaver for me. So thank you for what you're doing, and I hope you can do more. We need your help.
Thank you. Chancellor.
Hello, I'm Chancellor Mansour, Executive Director of the Housing Rights Center. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. This is sorely needed. It's very much needed. I've spoken with counterparts in other cities that have very strong anti-tenant harassment ordinances, and they all say from the city attorney's office from Santa Monica, West Hollywood, other cities, that they don't know what they would do with such an ordinance because it provides such a valuable tool to protect the rights of tenants. Of course, there are good landlords out there who don't harass tenants. But the problem is that there are numerous landlords who do, and they do harass tenants, as you've heard these stories over and over again, and use really horrendous tactics. And it's not just against RSO tenants, but tenants in all dwellings as well. So the one thing I would ask is that you look about seeing if it could apply to all buildings, because even when a landlord can give an appropriate notice, like a 30, 60, or 90-day notice for subsidized housing, oftentimes they will still use tactics to try to get the tenant out quickly and not go through the lengthy notice period or the lengthy eviction process. One of the number one things we see at the Housing Rights Center, just really quickly, parking gets taken away. The families with children get harassed, especially during the summertime. Families can't even open up their windows, even if they have no AC, because the manager will say, we don't want to hear the kids' noise. They can't play outside. And units with service animals and support animals start getting harassed for those animals as well. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I really encourage you to continue this.
I think Gabriela Maca. While we wait for her, Lumenita Roman, Maria Giron, Alberto Bustamante, and Anabela Mazagregos.
Soy María Julia Girón. Okay. Y estoy enferma porque me están hostigando muchos. Ayer llegaron precisamente a decirme que dónde fuera a meter las cosas.
My name is Julia Girón, and I'm here because I've been getting sick because of all the intense harassment I've been receiving. Yesterday, my landlord came to harass me.
Ayer llegaron a decirme otra vez que mirar a ver a dónde metía mis cosas y yo no hallo qué hacer ya.
They've been telling me to leave my house and figure out where to leave my stuff, and I don't know what to do.
Desde noviembre que no me reciben la renta.
They haven't taken my rent since November, even though I keep offering it to them.
Ajá. Y ya le digo lo que quiero yo que me hagan el favor de ver cómo a dónde me meto porque me van a dejar sin nada allí.
But she doesn't understand that it's hard to find a place for me to put my things in myself because she won't let me stay there.
Continúa. Sí.
Nos dan 2 minutos.
Ya le digo, no sé yo ni qué hacer porque como yo vi cuando sacaron a un pobre señor ahí a puros golpes lo sacaron.
I don't even know what to do anymore, and I'm afraid because I saw how they took out one man from his apartment by beating him, and I'm afraid to stay where I am, but I also don't have a place to go.
Estoy bien mala yo, fíjese.
I'm really ill. I'm really sick.
De depresión.
From depression.
Y no salgo ni siquiera la.
I can't even leave the house. Thank you.
Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Lumenita Roman. I am a disability advocate. I'm also the housing chair for the Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Council. Unfortunately, as a disability advocate and a live-in caregiver, I have experienced harassment towards the person that I'm taking care of and of course, towards myself. Currently, we're living in one of the affordable units in a luxury building, which is not covered by the RSO. So I am strongly requesting and begging you to extend this protection to all the other tenants, including the ones who live in affordable units. They really need you. And the landlords have many tools at their disposal in order to harass their tenants. And it's unconscionable and it is unhuman. Like this lady said, it hurts you deeply, emotionally, a great emotional distress and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Anabela Mazariegos. I'm from the tenant unions, LACLA, and also Occupy Los Angeles. Housing is a human right. Human right it should be not to be harassed and not to be discriminated. In my personal account, my landlady was getting older, and then the grandkids and the daughters came and they were harassing me. They took me to court because they want me to leave. I did not leave. Now we have a gentrifier who purchased the property. He doesn't care. He doesn't know about the law because he's a foreign investor. They have about 10 LLCs. To me, that's like a money laundering, and he doesn't want to fix the property. He put some people living in the unit that I live to harass me, but I called the police immediately and let them know that here we have some laws they have to respect. But it's not fair to live under harassment or being discriminated. Please, we need this law. Children, seniors, all kind of people are being in stress because of this situation. Please, vote yes.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Gabriela.
Good afternoon, my name is Gabriela.
Vengo también para que nos ayuden porque es mucho que nos estén maltratando.
I'm here to ask you for help because they're mistreating us really badly.
A mí me dijeron que porque vivo en un área donde no hay nada, que conmigo podían hacer lo que quisieran.
For me, they told me because I lived in an area without anything, without rent control, that they could do anything that they wanted.
So necesitamos ayuda.
We need help. Thank you.
Gracias. Alberto Bustamante. Janet Gagnon, Lori Carter, Chris Estrada.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Soy Alberto Bustamante y vengo porque el dueño me está corriendo del apartamento.
My name is Alberto Bustamante, and I'm here because my landlord is trying to kick me out of my apartment.
Le estoy pagando la renta puntual, pero nomás me quiere correr, nomás tengo 4 niños y me quiere desalojar y está muy cara la renta para buscar más.
I'm paying rent on time, but he wants to kick me out because I've got 4 kids, but I can't afford anywhere else.
Por favor, a ver si nos pueden ayudar para que tengamos control de renta en áreas que no son compradas de renta, porque donde vivo no hay control de renta.
Please help me out because we need rent control in areas that don't have it. Where I live, I don't have rent control.
Y la manager me dijo que yo no tenía derechos de nada porque ahí no tenía ni una ley para nosotros porque no había control de renta ahí.
And the manager told me that because we didn't have rent control, I also didn't have any other rights at all. That's it. Thank you.
Janet?
Janet Gagnon with the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. We represent the small mom and pop owners throughout LA City, and we are not in support of harassment at all. Good landlords do not do that. But we do have some concerns about this ordinance. Unintended consequences. The fine amount of $10,000 is a 10-fold increase, and it's being done in relationship to Santa Monica. That's a totally different rental market, and you can get the same result in compliance with the original $1,000, which is what West Hollywood did. We also object to criminalizing these activities, especially regarding pets, where we're putting human beings in jail versus having some care for the pets. So we just want to work together as you define this harassment ordinance going forward. We also have some concerns regarding the citizenship issue in inquiries because those can be very misunderstood and simple misunderstandings for small mom and pop owners. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori Carter, Chris Estrada, Miguel Ángel Cebreros, y Nisha Villas.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Estrada. As a community organizer with the LA Center for Community Law and Action and the LA Tenants Union and a tenant myself, I see case after case of landlord harassment every single day. It happens to all kinds of tenants, RSO, non-RSO, whether they have a corporate landlord or a mom and pop landlord, high income or low. Just this morning, I got a call from tenants in Lincoln Heights who don't have rent control and whose landlord owns only 4 buildings, a mom and pop landlord, you might say. The landlord and his agents have repeatedly harassed the tenants by slashing their tires, smashing car windows. This morning, he even defecated on their doorstep. Tenants need increased protections. The current protections are nowhere near enough. I urge you to ensure that these protections apply to all tenants in the city, that they also include provisions for tenants who are organizing and forming tenants associations. Thank you.
Miguel.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Mi nombre es Miguel Ángel Cebreros.
My name is Miguel Ángel
Vivo
Cebreros.
en el 2649 de la calle Marengo,
I live in 2649 Marengo Street,
apartamento 23,
apartment 23.
y hemos tenido problemas con la manejadora o la vocera o lo que sea, la señora Mónica Pérez.
We've had a lot of problems with our manager, Monica Perez.
Esta señora nos acosa permanentemente.
She's permanently harassing us.
Con palabras fuertes, nos levanta la voz.
With strong language, and she yells at us.
Ella nos dice que hay gente que está dispuesta a pagar 3 veces más que nosotros lo que pagamos de renta.
She says that there are people who are willing to pay 3 times what we pay in rent.
Y nos amenaza permanentemente para todo, con que nos va
She harasses us constantly for everything.
A desalojar.
It's telling us that she's going to evict us.
Y a mí me sacó mi número de seguro social bajo una amenaza. Que si no se lo,
got my social security number by threatening me.
Que si no se lo daba, me iba a mandar un desalojo inmediatamente.
She told me that if I didn't give it to her, she would evict me immediately.
Y bueno, y los problemas de diabetes que tengo 62 años.
I'm 62 years old and I have diabetes.
Me está afectando también, a veces no me paso las noches en vela, no dormir y tengo problemas de mareos y todo eso, muchas cosas.
It really affects me because sometimes I don't sleep at night and I'm always worried about it.
Y la ciudad le ordenó cambiarnos un aire acondicionado, no lo hizo. Tampoco sirve la calefacción y tampoco no nos las cambian, pero
She's retaliating by not repairing our air conditioning or our heaters.
Pero hay una orden de la ciudad
But there's an order from the city.
Que me cambiara ahorita no lo necesito, el aire acondicionado en verano.
Change out the AC during the summer.
Y no lo hizo. El 31 de octubre
On the 31st of October.
Fue el inspector, pero yo no sé qué fue lo que reportó.
But I don't know what he reported.
Bueno, lo que yo pido es que haya control de renta para toda la ciudad de Los Ángeles, para que haya justicia para todos. La verdad, los problemas son grandes en la calle Marengo, en el edificio 20. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nisha Vyas. I'm the directing attorney of the Homelessness Prevention Law Project at Public Counsel. I work with a team of attorneys who provide eviction defense and housing advocacy services for low-income tenants across LA County. We have worked with so many tenants who are experiencing relentless harassment by property owners. Many of these stories are very similar to the ones that you've heard today so eloquently by tenants who have testified. We've just some examples, a new landlord who engaged in construction starting at 6 a.m. on weekends and on holidays, including Thanksgiving. Landlords who give nearly daily notices for unspecified or imaginary repairs to enter a unit. Tenants who are made uncomfortable by video cameras mounted within view of the insides of their units. Non-citizen tenants are particularly vulnerable to harassment and displacement tactics. So we need a robust, in conclusion, a robust anti-harassment ordinance that addresses harassment in RSO and non-RSO units. Thank you so much.
Lori Carter, did we hear from Lori Carter? James Porter, Francesca De La Rosa, Steve Diaz, and Benito Flores. Mr. Porter.
Oh, me first? Okay. My name is James Porter. I'm a member of LA CAN. Everyone has a right to feel safe and secure in his house. Harassment of tenants and their family of landlords and property management undermines the basic freedom that many of us take for granted. We, the undersigned organization, write in strong support the adoption of the anti-tenant harassment ordinance. We want City Council members to take action and pass an ordinance that covers all tenants and all forms of harassment. We also want this ordinance go hand in hand with the upcoming rights to counsel ordinance.
Thank you. Steve Diaz.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Steve Diaz, and I am with the LA Community Action Network, LA CAN. Much of the stories around sort of the issues that tenants are facing on a daily have been mentioned. The one thing I would just like to add to this conversation is that this is a great opportunity to increase the platform around tenant protections and tenant sort of stability that it needs to happen in order to stabilize our rental market. A tenant harassment bill complements a right to counsel ordinance that's being talked about and proposed at this moment and should really go hand in hand in partnership and building up the infrastructure that protects tenants in the city of Los Angeles. So pass this, add some stuff to it, make it stronger, make some clear definitions added, allow for attorney's fees, and also ensure that it goes hand in hand with the right to counsel ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Benito Flores.
Mi nombre es Benito Flores, de Eco Park.
My name is Benito Flores from Echo Park.
A mí ya me corrieron de mi apartamento, vivo en un van, soy un homeless.
I was kicked out of my apartment, and now I live in my van and I'm homeless.
Cuando un inquilino rechaza el contrato por dinero de llaves,
When a tenant refuses a cash for keys offer,
el dueño debe parar de insistir.
the landlord must stop insisting.
A pesar de eso, el millonario dueño insiste repetidamente en renegociar el contrato anulado.
Despite this, millionaire landlords keep insisting that we renegotiate the annulled contract.
Envió por correo un cashier check de $10,000.
He sent me a cashier's check in the mail for $10,000.
Ese es un grave problema para el inquilino.
This is a great problem for tenants.
El dueño no quiere pasar a recoger su cheque y ese cheque es un peligro, pues alguien puede entrar y robar y asaltar.
The landlord doesn't want to come and pick up the check, which is a really big risk because people could enter and steal the check and break in.
Es un cashier check que no se puede romper.
It's a cashier's check. That can't
Es
be broken.
un minuto, es muy poco tiempo.
1 minute is too little. Oh, pero le dan 2 minutos.
Oh, sí, perdón. El dueño puede entrar porque está en construcción.
The landlord can come in because they're doing construction.
Un león no negocia con un cordero, se lo traga.
A lion doesn't negotiate with a sheep. He eats the sheep.
El millonario con tantos recursos y tantos abogados no negocia con un inquilino de salario mínimo, se lo traga.
It's not a negotiation when a millionaire landlord with a whole host of attorneys threatens a tenant. It's just the landlord eating the tenant.
Eso no es negociación, es hostigamiento.
That's not a negotiation, that's harassment.
Por favor, incluyan este tipo de hostigamiento en la ley. Toda insistencia de renegociar el contrato después de que el inquilino ha dicho no es hostigamiento que debe ser prohibido y castigado.
Please include this in the law. Any insistence on renegotiating the contract after it's already been completed is harassment. Please include cash for keys offers as harassment.
Ahora es el momento de evitar el hostigamiento o verán más gente viviendo en la calle.
Now
No
is the
queremos
time.
gente viviendo en la calle.
Now is the time to stop harassment and prevent more people from becoming homeless.
Gracias.
Thank
Gracias.
you.
Francesca de la Rosa. Francesca de la Rosa. Luis Cabrales, Rami Ganchao, Miguel Ángel Severos, John Matter. Please go forward. Identify yourself.
Yes, my name's Romy Gansha. I'm an attorney at the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. LAFLA represents low-income tenants throughout the city of Los Angeles who face landlord harassment on a daily basis. We join our partners who are here today in strongly supporting the adoption of an anti-harassment ordinance. I want to underscore the issue that the gentleman before me just mentioned about tenants who are frequently landlords who make repeated cash for keys buyouts offers after a tenant has told the landlord no. We see this all the time, and we see tenants who, even though we're educating them, even though we're working with tenants, even if they know their rights, they know that they don't have to accept a buyout offer, when their landlord constantly bombards them with these offers after they've said no, they can be worn down or just simply misled into thinking they have no choice but to move out. So we think that we can include this, that this should be included in the ordinance, that to define harassment to include repeated cash for keys buyout offers after a period of time after a tenant has said, no, I don't want to move out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council Member. My name is Luis Cabrales. I really appreciate, Executive Director at Inquilinos Unidos. I appreciate this step forward to protecting low-income families and, as a result, low-income housing stock. We would like to also see the inclusion of landlords' agents in the anti-harassment ordinance, and I'm going to explain to you why. Inquilinos Unidos receives approximately 1,400 families coming over to us each year for assistance. 60% of these tenants are single mother families. The second largest group are elderly. And these groups of people, specifically when undocumented, are the easiest target for harassment. Harassment is so prevalent and we can show proof of cases, of thousands of cases we have seen over the years, that this harassment is so prevalent that in many times it turns into threats of violence, sexual assault, and physical violence.
Thank you.
We need to stop this. Thank you very much.
John Motter, Denise McGranahan, Jose Camacho, Jane Dimian. John Motter? Jose Camacho?
I'm Jose Camacho. I'm another Jose in Los Angeles. My question to you is, what type of society do we want to have here? You know, if you don't give some teeth to this law, because the tenants cannot get or afford, or nor will attorneys generally take the type of cases that are put forth. But if you put some teeth into the remedies, I would suggest triple the attorney's fees, model it under the Elder Adult Dependent Adult Civil Protection Act, those remedies, or the American Disability Act, which gives you triple attorney's fees and caps the tenant's recovery. If you don't, I couldn't believe what that lady that was up here was proposing, to cap the fine at $1,000. She's intending to violate, and she wants it to be an affordable $1,000 each time she harasses or the people she represents with, acts in concert with, or whatever. That's a trip to Vegas. They want you to have a society where these people can harass, and it only costs $1,000.
Jane Dimin.
That's me. Hi, council members. We've heard today the horrors of tenant harassment at the hands of landlords and their agents. And I want to say this is an urgent matter. We have to pass this ordinance right away. I have some suggestions. I'm grateful to HCID for the report. I'd like to stress that this needs to be for both RSO and non-RSO tenants, citywide. Someone already discussed cash for keys. This is an area of great harassment, and we need to make sure that landlords do not attempt or talk to tenants about a tenant buyout agreement for more than one time a year. Some people suggested 6 months. I think once a year is enough, because this is an area of harassment for tenants. This should also apply to both verbal and written agreements, because many times tenants are given verbal agreements with their landlords. And tenants should be able to get attorney's fees if they're found in court. Thank you.
Denise?
Good afternoon. My name is Denise McGranahan. I am an attorney at the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. I've worked in the Santa Monica office since 1996. Right after I went to work there, Santa Monica passed a tenant harassment law. I was involved in working on that law, and I've been involved in working on pretty much every amendment since then. I don't know what I would have done in the last 22 years to help my clients in Santa Monica without this law. Partly because, well, Santa Monica's a little different. The rents were lower at the time Costa-Hawkins was passed than in Los Angeles because we had vacancy control. We've seen every sort of harassment. The staff did a great job of compiling different options for the council, and I actually think it's about time that LA does this. And I'm an LA resident. I live in the Valley. This is a tool. It's a tool. Education of tenants and landlords. The most important thing of all is enforcement. Can I finish my sentence? And I just want to say both city enforcement with enough staff and private enforcement and penalties, including injunctive relief, escalating penalties for repeat offenders. I could go on, but...
Right, your time's up.
Thank you.
John Motter, Noah Grinberg, Leonardo Sanchez.
My name is Leonardo Sanchez. I live in 5202 Fountain Avenue. The landlord has come and tried to do the law into her own hands, and she has been trying to evict me. She cut the electricity of the apartment. She went to the Water and Power and ordered to remove the meter, and I was without water for 4 months. She cut the gas. I am paying the gas, the electricity, but she wants to do the justice in her own hands. So I thank you for the concern on the anti-harassment. She has demolished my apartment, and there is still a wall open. I have a video of the times she has been harassed.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Noah Greenberg. I'm an attorney at the Los Angeles Center for Community Law and Action. One of the most common fact patterns that we see is where landlords serve their tenants a series of frivolous, trumped-up, baseless eviction notices so they can get their tenants into eviction court. You've heard from some of those tenants today, and tenants like them and others, they might win their eviction case 1 time or twice, 3 times, but their landlord's going to keep bringing them into eviction court because the eviction process in California is expedited, and they know that the 5th or 6th time their tenant's going to cave in and they're going to leave. Like my colleague Amy Williams said, it's important that this ordinance includes strong remedies, but we don't have to wait for plaintiffs' attorneys to take these cases. The city can include remedies, or I should say the city can include a remedy for a tenant where the tenant successfully defends an eviction action based on a frivolous lawsuit or a frivolous, baseless notice, and the fact finder in that eviction case finds that the notice was baseless, frivolous, and designed simply to harass the tenant and get them out of their house. The city can impose penalties on a landlord in that case as well, and that will prevent landlords from bringing tenants into eviction court on the basis of these notices.
Thank you. That's it. Okay, can we hear from HSID? Do you want to take a break? What are you doing?
Good afternoon, council members. Anna Ortega, Director of Rent Stabilization. It's late, so I'm going to give you the important parts of our report. The motion basically asked us to look at anti-harassment ordinances from rent control cities throughout the state. We have done that. We've incorporated the gist of all of those ordinances, taken the best parts of each, and included it in these recommendations. And we looked at cities even beyond those that were mentioned in the motion. Specifically, we're recommending that the city attorney and HSID work together to adopt an ordinance that would define tenant harassment as outlined on page 6, but that's not the final language. We would defer to the city attorney on what it should actually include. It would provide an affirmative defense for tenants in eviction actions. It would strengthen civil penalties in affirmative actions against landlords by providing that any aggrieved party or the city can institute a civil proceeding for injunctive relief and damages that can include costs and attorney's fees, something that's been mentioned this afternoon. It would allow courts to allow penalties of up to $10,000 depending on the severity of a case. It would specify that violations of the tenant harassment ordinance are misdemeanors subject to the remedies available in the rent stabilization ordinance. It would amend the ordinance sections 151.09 A, B, and D, and 151.10 regarding evictions for retaliation, changes in terms of tenancy for pets, and making all of these misdemeanors, which are grounds for criminal prosecution. It increases the maximum fines for violations of the RSO from the current language, which says not more than $1,000, to instead be not up to $10,000. So that's a big increase. and it would add an additional penalty of up to $5,000 when the harassment is of senior citizens or disabled tenants, which are, of course, the most vulnerable tenants. It would disallow the removal of parking when this is already part of the lease, and this is at the recommendation of the Rent Adjustment Commission. A major question for the council about this is on the issue of whether this should be tailored to RSO units or whether it should apply to all rental units of the city. If it's under the RSO, we have an existing funding mechanism, which is the fees paid by landlords and tenants into the rent trust fund. If it's citywide, then the council would need to identify a means of funding it. Our transmittal discusses proposed staffing that we believe would be initially necessary to implement it. We're estimating approximately 5 positions to start. That includes 2 positions in the Office of the City Attorney if we're talking about our RSO, but if it's all-inclusive, then we estimate up to 7 positions. So basically, the recommendations would deter landlords from harassing tenants or engaging in actions that result in the constructive eviction of tenants. It would partially prevent harassment through education and outreach. It would expand services to resolve our landlord-tenant conflicts through mediation, and it would enhance the ability of tenant legal services providers and advocates to defend tenants in actions to fight tenant harassment. So I'm available to answer any questions.
Good. So I want to thank all the tenants who came today and laid out some really extraordinary testimony. I'm particularly interested in some of the things I heard in Lincoln Heights, and so if I could get some of those reports with more specificity. Some seem to be outrageous if they're true. And I also think that to the extent that we can incorporate these, that this is going to require us to sit down and work these out. So I'm going to hold this item in committee for 2 weeks, instruct HCID to meet with stakeholders to address the concerns that were discussed today, how we can incorporate them into the final product and improve the policy so that it works for the city, and request that HCID report back to this committee on February 13th, 2019, which is the next meeting. Mr. Harris-Dawson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for everybody that came out today to tell these stories. I have to say they were, the volume was quite moving. The consistency of the stories was quite compelling, and some of the tactics, in our council office, more than jobs, more than crime, we get tenant harassment calls. And I thought we had heard everything in our council office, and I heard things today that we hadn't heard yet, and so I'm supportive of the chair taking 2 weeks to get this done. This is a lot to get done in 2 weeks, but I think it's a point of urgency given the situation we have here in Los Angeles around housing. And then also to the apartment owners, I want to say, because I come from a family of apartment owners. That's how I went to college. And when I was growing up, Mr. Chair, I would say to my grandpa, I was like, hey, the city council's about to pass this thing on landlords. Why aren't we opposing this? And my grandpa would say to me, we're not opposing this because we don't do that. Like we don't oppose the speed limit on the highway because we don't drive fast, right? So we want investors to continue to invest in Los Angeles. We want, home ownership and even landlordship to be a way that families can build wealth, but we want to do it in a way where the rules of the road are make it safe for everybody. And make this continue to be a livable place. So with that said, I second and strongly concur with your recommendation.
Okay. I know I owe somebody a minute of time, but I think we're going to defer that for the, we will reopen this up for discussion when we come back, when people get an opportunity to look at the proposed finished product, final product, and then people will be able to come back. If there's a need to add additional discussion, we will take that at that time and move on the item at that time. So I thank all of you for being here this afternoon. I thank you for your testimony, and thank you for your interest, both sides of this issue, all sides of this issue. We're all committed to get a resolution that serves the people of Los Angeles. I thank you. Item, want to take a 5-minute break?
Still have item 5. We still have item 5.
I understand that.
Okay.
I was saying we wanted to take a 5-minute break. Good. You want to power through it? We're going to power through. Oh, Corin's going to come up. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break and reconvene and, oh, there you are. No, start the clock on the 5-minute break right now. That's a lot. Yeah. Some of these things are outrageous. Somebody will come up here and say, these people slashed the tires and they pooped on the doorstep. Tell me who did that. And you don't need a law to do that. There's other...
And it's like, did you call the police?
Right.
Did you know?
You guys ready?
Yep. We're all ready.
Oh, where's that?
Okay. Ooh.
Okay, sir.
All right, I want to reconvene the meeting of the Housing Community Investment Committee. It is 5 o'clock, and we are on item number 5. We want to do public comment. Carlos Aguilar, are you here still? Carlos Aguilar, come on up. Patricia Bland, Kay Butterfield, and Dion Diosario. Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you. Carlos Aguilar, Coalition for Economic Survival. CES fully supports an ordinance that prohibits discriminations against Section 8 voucher holders. Section 8 is a crucial tool in providing affordable housing to low-income and homeless residents. Unfortunately, we see too many Section 8 tenants discriminated against. Case in point is former LA Clipper owner Donald Sterling. For years, CES has battled Sterling, who has a long history of discrimination against people of color and low-income Section 8 voucher holders. Sterling recently attempted to illegally displace formerly homeless veteran Section 8 tenants at a Koreatown building he purchased. It took community organizing efforts to prevent their illegal displacement. income source discrimination against the most at risk of homelessness needs to stop. LA needs to join with other cities that have similar sources of income ordinances which have resulted in sharp declines in discrimination and displacement. We urge you to adopt this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, my name is Patricia Bland, and I am actually here for the owners and as actually against Section 8. Like, I think that the owners should be able to have a voice and not be able to accept Section 8 if they choose to. And that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Kay Butterfield?
Yes, I'm Kay Butterfield, and I work for Horace Height Estates. And I don't believe in, I think Section 8 has its purpose, but there is so much involved with just trying to implement it that it's not cost-worthy. You could go broke doing that. And I don't mean that in a flighty way or anything like that. I just mean that it has its good points and its bad points. I mean, when Katrina, the hurricane, wiped out New Orleans, my boss went down, sponsored a family, and brought them out here, put them up in an apartment for a year and a half till they got back on their feet. So I don't get where all landlords are real oogly booglies. Thank you.
Thank you. And Diane?
Hi, my name is Diane G. Rosario. I'm a landlord here, a small mom and pop. I called HUD yesterday to sign up for the Section 8 housing program and was horrified and shocked to find out that HUD and HCI DLA has no idea how the Section 8 housing program will dovetail with the Recicla program. The Recicla program charges 3.05% every year. The Section 8 charges 3.0%. As opposed to 3.05, I'm sorry. So I'll lose money every year if I put a Section 8 housing in, and I can't charge them a separate trash bill because the way the lease works, I'll end up paying 10 months worth of trash bills for those folks because of the timing of it. Those departments need to work together if you want us to do this. And I have to say one other thing, because Recicla's ruining low-income housing. It really, really is. I have 4 buildings. Only Recicla building in low income is a problem. The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power had to pay $44 million a couple of years ago because of bad billing practices and estimating fees. The city haulers are estimating fees and committing bad business practices. Can we afford another $44 million payout? Because they're abusing the power that you guys gave them. Make them stop. They're not following the rules.
Thank you. Amy Williams, Eddie Anderson, Natalie Meniv, and Tyler Anderson. Amy C. Williams. Eddie Anderson.
Yes. My name is Eddie Anderson. I work at the Horace Height Estates. We're a small apartment community in Sherman Oaks, and we oppose the Section 8 program. A few points I'd like to bring forward are stated from the standard rental process versus the HCV. I didn't know a few of these things, and it's very, very interesting that this attachment was sent to me. Once a voucher holder applies for a property, that property is taken off the market. That's called vacancy loss. The rent from the empty days are never recouped. There's waiting for inspections, waiting for re-inspections, waiting to schedule inspections. The leasing office adopts below market rent and lower rent rather than waiting for the rent. There are several more things, but my time's up.
Thank you so much. Natalie?
Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Menev. I'm an attorney with the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. LAFLA supports adoption of a source of income discrimination law in LA. LAFLA assists thousands of Section 8 tenants every year, and the situations in which our clients experience Section 8 discrimination are both tragic and unjust. Victims of domestic violence attempting to leave unsafe situations are unable to find landlords to accept their vouchers to relocate, causing them to lose their vouchers and in many cases become homeless. And when a landlord refuses to remedy severe habitability issues in a Section 8 unit, the tenant can be displaced through no fault of their own. When they attempt to use the voucher to find a safer unit, they're often met with the words, "We don't accept Section 8." Many of our clients pay over 70% of their income in rent, while patiently waiting up to 8 to 11 years for a voucher. When they finally get a voucher, they can't find a place to use it in LA. And while porting is an option, our clients often cannot afford the financial and emotional trauma of being uprooted from their communities. So we strongly support an adoption of a robust ordinance that protects Section 8 voucher holders, and we look forward to partnering with the city to drafting this language. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyler Anderson, Greg Spiegel, and J.W. Centerfit. Chancellor Amasur, Lumita Roman. Sir.
Good afternoon, Greg Spiegel from Inner City Law Center. I want to focus on how this would impact landlords. I'm in support of the prohibition on discriminating on source of income. Besides the prohibition on discrimination, nothing changes for landlords. Landlords would still have ability to screen applicants for approval. This would do nothing to change that. Landlords can still evict tenants for failing to comply with the lease. This would do nothing to change that. Landlords retain all the controls they need to deal with a potentially difficult tenant. Landlords may say that the problem isn't the tenant, it's the red tape that comes with the subsidies that waste time and cost money. I'm not so sure. 4 years ago, I worked with the City of Los Angeles, and along with many others, partnered with HACLA to try to help increase the number of landlords willing to house homeless veterans with VASH vouchers. In that work, we met with many landlords to learn how the VASH program could be improved. We developed incentives to address the landlord concerns. In spite of all these resources and accommodations, landlord participation rates have decreased. In 2015, 3 in 4 voucher holders were able to use their vouchers. Now it's 1 in 2. Very few landlords took advantage of the incentives, and the ones who did were doing so for humanitarian reasons. The lesson here is that most landlords don't want to participate because they don't want to serve this population. It's the people they are rejecting, not the program. That's why you need to prohibit that discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chancellor Mansour, the Housing Rights Center, the nation's oldest fair housing council, founded in 1968, the same year the Fair Housing Act was passed. I've been doing this work for 27 years in Los Angeles, starting with Tom Bradley when he started the Neighbor to Neighbor campaign to try to relieve some of the racial tensions that were going on between neighbors in Los Angeles. This has been an endemic problem we've had for a number of years. Exactly 25 years ago this week was the Northridge earthquake, and I was doing this work here. If you remember then, HUD and FEMA came to Los Angeles and gave thousands of Section 8 vouchers to people who were suddenly made homeless. And I led and conducted a fair housing investigation because we found that most of those Section 8 holders, those new holders, could not find a landlord to accept their Section 8. So for more than 25 years, this has been an extreme problem that has actually contributed to the homelessness in this city. And Los Angeles is actually behind in this. There are many other cities and states in this country, hopefully you'll hear a little bit more of this from HACLA, that have already included Section 8 as a source of income protection. It's a strongly established fair housing right. And also one other quick thing, oftentimes we have found at the Housing Rights Center that landlords will use discrimination. The real reason oftentimes is based on race. They don't want black tenants there. Sometimes they don't want families with kids there. So they use Section 8 as an easy way, a protectual way to oftentimes get at the underlying discrimination, which is more costly and more time intensive to try to find out if the owner's real motivation is race. But clearly, if Section 8 is protected, then that knocks out a lot of other potential discrimination that could happen because we can protect that tenant based on that facial, that reason right then and there, I don't want Section 8. We don't even have to get to more underlying investigation as to, is it really because that tenant is black? Is that really because that tenant has children or other reasons?
Thank you.
Again, my name is Luminitza Roman. I am a disability advocate, and I am the housing chair for the Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Council. I'm also the homeless liaison for the Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Council. No dogs and no Section 8. There are many, many ads out there advertising rental. And the Association of Dogs and Section 8 and prohibiting having both of those qualifications are prevalent. I am so thrilled to see this happening. I'm actually moved to tears to see this happening right now because I've been fighting this type of discrimination, source of income discrimination, for years and years in court. See Roman versus BRE. I have been trying to get to the state legislature, and I would appreciate a little bit of more time because I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. There is such a tragedy out there, and as a homeless liaison, I told the mayor, please make not acceptance of Section 8 voucher illegal and give out Section 8 vouchers to homeless. We have so many units out there, those luxury units, they are just rented out to Airbnb and unoccupied. They could be used now by homeless people with Section 8 vouchers or other type of governmental assistance to get housing now. Please do that. And hopefully my voice has been heard, but thank you so much, and I strongly support this particular ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Ganyan, Anabella Mazariegos, Denise McGranahan, and Nisa Villas. Anabella? Left? Okay.
Janet Gagnon with the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles, and we hosted a HUD listening session in October 2018 per HUD's request to hear why owners weren't participating more in the program, and the clear answer was it is a problem with the program itself, not with the people. Many of our owners participated in the 80s, and they said today's program is just unworkable. We have members that didn't receive payment for their first payment for 4 months. Small mom and pops with quadplexes and triplexes, they can't afford that, to wait that long. So we really strongly encourage corrections be made to the program before more owners are forced into it and they fail at it. And we stand ready to work with HACLA to make those improvements. And I would offer that at that listening session, our owners were very supportive of Glendale and San Bernardino, who they said were great public housing authorities to work with. They do not have a required source of income ordinance, and so it can be done without forcing people into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Again, this is Denise McGranahan. I work in the city of Santa Monica at the Legal Aid Foundation, and recently the city passed an ordinance in 2015 to prohibit discrimination against source of income on the basis of source of income, specifically targeting housing vouchers. And that ordinance has been upheld by both the Los Angeles Superior Court on January 31st, 2017. We were involved in we had interveners, tenants who were unable to find housing in Santa Monica with their vouchers. As a result of that ordinance, at least 12 people that we worked with the city of Santa Monica, who were mostly existing tenants, long-term elderly individuals who had lived in their homes, rent-controlled typically, for many, many years, were able to finally be able to use their vouchers that they waited for many years. And the landlords said no until we pointed out that this law existed and that they needed to not turn these people down merely because they were on Section 8. And not one of these problems, these tenants were a problem. In fact, studies do show that landlords don't rent to Section 8 tenants because they believe it's public housing, they associate it with people who are in other protected classes, and it is discriminatory. I think this law would be very successful. It also is really critical with respect to Measure H. Take, for example, the requirement to sign a W-9 form to get money. You won't be able to get it if your landlord has signed a W-9 form. It isn't required to do that. So there are obstacles to helping people through Measure H without a law like this.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to help you in any way, but I'm very happy this ordinance has come to Thank you.
Hi again, Nisha Vyas with Public Counsel. Public Counsel supports the ordinance prohibiting the source of income discrimination, which includes people who participate in programs such as Section 8. I will just say I co-sign the comments made by my colleagues at Inner City Law Center, Legal Aid Foundation, and Housing Rights Center, and others who are in support of this ordinance, which is long, long overdue. One of the largest sources of financial assistance to tenants is the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program, and the intent of the program was to promote housing choice. And as the city recognized in its assessment of fair housing, which was adopted in 2017 and submitted to HUD, landlords' ability to refuse to rent to voucher holders belies the very concept of housing choice and exacerbates concentration of poverty and racial segregation. So it's time to end the discrimination against these vulnerable tenants and truly give them a housing choice by prohibiting discrimination against voucher holders. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared Wright. Is that it?
All right, I will stay in the 1 minute of time. Gerard Wright, Policy Manager with the LA County Business Federation. We're in support with AGLA in our opposition to this particular ordinance because we have to fix the process. In order to fix that process, you have to look at the recommendations and also look at what's causing a lot of those issues to come to the forefront, what's causing a lot of owners and landlords, especially the smaller ones, to not take on this particular task because the process is so onerous, because the issues and the amount of time it takes to receive the funding, and, well, the young lady just pointed out, the discrepancy in percentage of the increases as well. That's a key concern that building owners as well as property owners for looking at building up wealth. That's something you have to take into consideration because we can't, especially for smaller property owners, if we're trying to build up wealth and you try to limit what that can create because of an onerous process outside their own control, we're going to continue this cycle of poverty, no matter how you look at it. And we just have to be very careful and mindful of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Who's up? Hackla? Hackla, you want to come up?
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Claudia Monterrosa, and I'm the Director for Public Policy and Research at HCLA. And I'm here to support the joint report between HACLA and HCLA on this recommended source of income ordinance. I'm just going to be providing some brief remarks in regards to the assessment of fair housing. By way of reminder, the city adopted the assessment of fair housing in October of 2017. And one of the key strategies and goals that came out of that was to support a source of income policy. Specifically, under Goal 4, Strategy 4.2, we state to expand the source of income protections to include housing choice vouchers and seek improvements to the Section 8 program to incentivize landlords to participate in the program. As HACLA will report today, there's a shortage of landlords actively participating in this program. And this shortage may be due to a myriad of reasons, and among them is discrimination against Section 8 voucher holders. And as we face a continuous increase in the crisis of affordable housing, this is a way to expand the mobility as required by the assessment of fair housing and provide choice and opportunity for tenants to move into higher opportunity areas as well. So we are in full support to help address the immediate crisis the city is facing, as well as to help bolster and continue to implement the adopted assessment of fair housing. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Panatter. I'm the Director of Section 8 at the Housing Authority City of Los Angeles, and I'm here with Margarita Lares. She's the Chief Programs Officer from our agency. Section 8 voucher utilization is challenging across the country. One tool cities and states have used to increase voucher utilization is source of income discrimination laws as they relate to Section 8 vouchers and other forms of rental assistance. These source of income laws operate by including source of income as one of the tenant characteristics which are protected from housing discrimination and specifically define source of income as including any type of rental assistance such as Section 8. An important thing to note about this ordinance is that it would not require landlords to accept Section 8 vouchers for vacant units. It would require that they treat any Section 8 applicant the same as they would any other non-Section 8 applicant and consider them for the unit. The same screening criteria would be used for either type of applicant. What the ordinance would prevent is discrimination of upfront Section 8 voucher holder status, meaning the signs we see, as was noted before, there's a Section 8 not welcome, Section 8 prohibited, would be prohibited, and Section 8 clients would be considered for any vacancies that occur. At the Housing Authority, we currently serve over 58,000 families. We have about 3,500 on the street right now with the voucher looking for units. A third of those folks are brand new people just coming on the program. The balance are people who are already on the program who want to move to a new unit. For those folks, only 53% of them are successful in finding a unit. We heard that before. So only 1 out of 2 people who receive a voucher actually locate a unit. And for those who don't locate a unit, if they are coming on our program through one of our special programs, they could be re-referred, which is a waste of time for everyone. Or if they are coming on our program from the Section 8 wait list, that's their one shot and they don't get another one. Currently, voucher holders receive 180 days on their voucher to look for a unit. That can be extended up to 240 days as a reasonable accommodation, and even an additional month after that can be granted by the Section 8 director, by me. Even with those time periods, though, we still have the 53% success rate for voucher holders. Section 8 utilization is important for the future allocations that we receive from HUD because that becomes the basis for the next year's funding level that we receive. Also, as has been noted before, the number of landlords that the Housing Authority has been working with has decreased by about 7% over the past 5 years for a variety of reasons, including the high cost of rent, the low vacancies, but also source of income discrimination. In addition, the LA Homeless Services Authority, LAHSA, administers the Rapid Rehousing Program, which would also be factored into this ordinance. The Rapid Rehousing Program is a service model offering people experiencing homelessness quick reconnection to permanent housing using time-limited financial resources and assistance. A number of agencies and cities and states across the country now have source of income discrimination ordinances or laws, including the states of Connecticut, Delaware, Maine, the ones noted on the report back. And in the state of California, the California Fair Employment and Housing Act prohibits discrimination based on source of income. However, rental assistance, including Section 8 vouchers, are not part of that definition. So we want to include that now. Beyond that, the state of California does allow local municipalities to enact such ordinances, and many cities have, as we've heard from Santa Monica, also Berkeley, San Diego, San Francisco, and Santa Clara County. One recent study that HUD commissioned that really supports source of income ordinances across the country was a study done by the Urban Institute that HUD commissioned called A Pilot Study of Landlord Acceptance of Housing Choice Vouchers. And they looked at the landlord participation in 5 cities. Those were Washington, D.C., LA County, Fort Worth, Philadelphia, and Newark. And in Fort Worth, only 78% of the voucher holders, 78% of the voucher holders were denied assistance. And in Los Angeles, 76.4% of the landlords declined to participate in the program. However, the two cities that had source of income discrimination ordinances had a much higher rate of success and or a lower denial rate of landlords willing to accept the program. In Washington, D.C., it was 14.8%, and in Newark, it was 30.9% of the landlords deciding not to participate in the Section 8 program. Additionally, the study found that voucher holders were 12% more likely to find housing in those jurisdictions with a source of income ordinance. You'll note in the report back that we included what some of the other localities are doing as far as enforcement and penalty options, including Santa Monica, San Diego, Denver, and San Francisco. One last point I wanted to make was regarding landlord concerns. We did participate in the HUD listening session. We did receive comments from the landlords on improvements they would like to see in the program, and I wanted to just point out a few of those. We are working with HCID on the inspection process to see through coordinating our database, developing a shared agreement to decrease the number of overall inspections that agency does and that we do, so we don't duplicate our efforts. We are also continually working at improving our process as allowed by the regulations. Some things we can't change because they are HUD regs, but those that we can, we work to implement as best we can. That includes processing all new contracts quickly. We inspect units within 2 to 3 days of receiving the paperwork on a unit. We use electronic signature and provision of documents by landlords. We allow landlords to create one vendor number per building, which helps them in record keeping. We have an online landlord portal that allows them to look at the check detail for all of their tenants on the program. We're working on an upfront negotiation of rent process so the landlords can know at the start whether or not their rent could be approved. We use a rent comparable process for all of our rent increases that we do. And for participants on the program, for landlords, over 90% of our rent increases are approved through that process. Let's see. Those are the main things that I wanted to talk about regarding some of the things that we're doing to work with landlords and improve the process. We also have our homeless incentive program. A major focus for us at the Housing Authority is assisting the homeless. And through the homeless incentive program, any landlord who agrees to rent to a homeless person is eligible for a holding fee to hold that unit for 30 days for a homeless tenant. They're also they can also access security deposit assistance, furnishing assistance for the family, and also at time of vacate, if the tenant vacates having caused damages, they can submit for damage mitigation. So we are open to working with landlords on any of the issues that we have that can help improve the process of the program, because we realize that landlords are our key partners in the program. However, we also want to provide our tenants the broadest housing opportunities possible. Those are my comments.
If I can add, Margarita Lares with HACLA, Chief Programs Officer. Just to restate and emphasize something that Carlos just mentioned in reference to the 3,500 voucher holders that are looking for housing today. 2/3 of them are individuals that were already housed but lost their housing generally because they were asked to move or for other circumstances. Generally, there's an increase of landlords requesting high rents that make the unit unaffordable, which is the part of the crisis in Los Angeles. Our fear is that eventually more individuals will fall into homelessness if they're not able to use their Section 8 voucher. Carlos also shared that 53% of the voucher holders are successful in finding housing. That's a huge drop from 83% to 75% to now 53%. And I think more alarming I wish to share that veterans in particular with the Section 8 VASH program, the success rate here in the city of Los Angeles is only 45%. So that's a major concern for us and should be for everybody else. HUD was at the listening sessions because, of course, they sponsored them. So HUD did listen to the concerns provided by the greater landlord community. A lot of the asks were regulatory in nature. Since those listening sessions, HACLA has met with the local HUD office here in Los Angeles to review the concerns that were expressed by the landlord community, identify those that are statutory in nature, regulatory nature, and ask HUD to work on those components. And at the same time, HACLA is willing to work with the HUD local office to come up with some creative solutions. So that's our statement, and I hope you take all of that into consideration for your decision. Thank you.
Elaine Zong from the City Attorney's Office. I'm just here to describe generally how the draft ordinance is written. The draft ordinance currently proposes to add Article 5.51 to the Public Welfare Code. In general terms, the draft ordinance would make it unlawful to refuse to rent to someone solely based on their source of income. Under the draft ordinance, source of income is defined to include any lawful source of income from any person, and it includes all forms of rental assistance, including Section 8 and the rapid rehousing program. So it would include federal, state, and other sources of rental assistance. The draft ordinance would also make it unlawful to require different rental terms based solely on a person's source of income. The ordinance would also make it unlawful to advertise that a particular rental unit is unavailable based on source of income. And it would make it unlawful to refuse to show a rental unit based on source of income. The draft ordinance presently contains several enforcement mechanisms. One is that any person may be able to bring a civil action to enforce the ordinance or to enforce violations of the code. The ordinance provides for actual damages or 3 times the amount of 1 month's rent, whichever is higher. The court may also award attorney's fees, costs, and punitive damages. The draft ordinance also includes a provision allowing persons to bring actions for equitable relief. These mechanisms are not exclusive, and the remedies are consistent with those offered in other jurisdictions that include source of income, who have similar source of income ordinances or codes.
Thank you. Comments from members of the committee. Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think one thing that everyone should be able to agree about on this, whether they're housing providers or those in need of housing, is that when we have federal programs to assist people in finding housing and half of the people who are the recipients of those programs cannot find a place to live, that is a problem of tragic proportions that needs to be fixed. We can debate about what the reasons for that problem are, but I think it's undeniable it's an outrageous problem to have here in Los Angeles, especially when there are 50,000 people without homes on the streets, and countless more who are hanging on to that bottom rung, trying to stay housed before they become homeless. And these voucher programs, all of them, Section 8 notably, but other voucher programs at all, as well, are sometimes the last barrier between a person being housed and a person being homeless. So this is a problem that we have to grab by the horns and fix. And we're late to the game. About half of the largest cities in America have already done this. The other major cities of California, San Francisco and San Diego, have already done this. This is not just Berkeley and Santa Monica that have done this. This is, major cities that are leading the way, and we are trailing behind. And it's, considering our challenges in affordability right now and our challenges with homelessness, I think that's disgraceful. So that's why I think this is an important step forward. I have a few questions, if I may, Mr. Chair, sure, before I suggest a few additional steps. I'd like to ask, first, there were a few of the landlords and their representatives who had a few points that I'd like your comments on. First of all, in terms of creditworthiness, we have vacancy decontrol in Los Angeles, so a vacant unit can be rented for any amount that the market will bear. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So if someone is anticipating, if someone is renting their unit at an amount that is 5 times the amount of a typical voucher, there's no prohibition in doing that, right?
Correct. I mean, there are a lot of high-rent neighborhoods in the city that we can't operate in because, per the regulations from HUD, there is a fair market rent maximum that we can pay. The Housing Authority is paying the maximum that we can, which is 120% of the FMR. We have a higher voucher payment standard that we can pay for veterans in the HUD VASH program, but there is a cap per the program.
So if the market rate for that apartment or that unit is at a rate that cannot be afforded by the voucher holder, when you take the value of the voucher plus whatever other income they have, there is no prohibition in the landlord taking a pass on that tenant because of creditworthiness. Is that right?
Well, that's correct. And it's beyond creditworthiness. It's just beyond the parameters of the program.
Yeah. So let me ask a little bit more about creditworthiness. And this is more a question, I think, for the city attorney, because this just occurred to me actually as we were talking about it. Often, a voucher holder is going to have additional income which beyond their voucher, which allows them to make up the difference in the amount of the rent. So are the other ordinances that have been crafted by other cities, how do they treat the income part of this in terms of source of income? In other words, let's suppose one person has a Section 8 voucher and a regular job that they have a regular income from every month. Another has a Section 8 voucher, but they have sketchy additional income to make up that difference. Can the landlord differentiate among tenants based on the non-voucher component of their income?
I believe the other ordinances would not prohibit the landlord from considering other factors outside of the Section 8 or outside of the rental assistance, from considering that as part of the application process.
I think that is the point of this. So I think as we draft the language of the ordinance and move forward on this, we want to make sure that that is the objective, to ensure that reliable voucher revenue is not discriminated against. But unreliable sources of revenue, that's perfectly legitimate for somebody to differentiate among reliability factors. At least that's what I would propose for this. So somebody said earlier, and this was off, I think, the form that was provided by AGLA, I think, with a number of the objections to the program and the cost elements of that. So one of the public speakers said that the unit has to go off market once a voucher holder applies for the unit. That's not quite right, is it? I mean, the unit goes off the market only after the landlord and the tenant have agreed that that tenant is going to be taking the apartment, subject to approval of the Housing Authority. Isn't that right?
That's correct, because the landlord fills out paperwork regarding the unit after he's made an agreement with the tenant to rent that unit to them on Section 8.
Okay, great. One of the speakers mentioned Recicla. That's a much broader problem that we continue to struggle with regardless of this. But can you speak to that issue? And I think the point that she was making is that there's built-in cost increases in Recicla which may exceed the cost increases that would be allowed under the under some voucher programs. I'm assuming that in anticipation of that, landlord could start this person off at a higher rent in order to anticipate that increase. But there is a disconnect there, and there is a bit of an issue, because if costs are increasing faster than what's allowed in terms of rental income, that's going to be a disincentive to the creation of additional affordable housing. So how do we address that?
Well, one thing I can say about that is, so there is the maximum that we can pay under Section 8 per the regulations and the fair market rent. There are some other regulations that can come into play depending on what type of building it is. If it's a tax credit unit, the most the owner can ask for is the lower of the voucher payment standard or the asking rent as supported by comps. However, that's the main other limitation that I'm aware of per the program.
Not on the Recicla. But it's not on the Recicla. That's the problem.
So more broadly than that, I suppose, you mentioned that there's some parts of this that we can address through our administration. There are some parts of this that we cannot touch because of the, carved in stone federal regulations. So after the listening tour, what are the biggest HUD requirement problems that are unchangeable? And have you thought through what ways there are that we might be able to provide an accommodation for landlords in order to make up for that problem?
Well, one of the biggest issues that came up in the landlord listening session was the amount of rent that we can offer, because the fair market rent lags behind the market. It's at least a couple years behind the market. If the average rental amount for a one-bedroom in the city is $2,100 and the most that we can offer is around $1,500, that's a big disincentive right there for landlords participating.
But wait, stop. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but on that point, that's irrelevant to this ordinance, isn't it? Because
it is. However, that's one of the things that HUD took away from the listening session. How can we improve the amount that cities can offer, housing authorities can offer to landlords?
So that's a larger problem than
Exactly.
this ordinance. But this ordinance isn't impacted by that at all, because the landlord could still choose not to rent to a person if they
Correct.
don't have the additional income to make up the gap, right?
Well, yes, and the other thing is, when we come up with the overall contract rent that we can approve for a unit, there are two components of that. One is the tenant portion of the rent, which is based on 30% of their income, so the landlord gets that check directly from the landlord, and the balance up to the overall contract rent that we can approve is what the landlord gets from the housing authority. So the tenant's income is factored into the maximum that we can pay the landlord.
Okay. Are there any other major obstacles that we can?
Inspections is always an issue, and
I'm sorry, what is?
I'm sorry, inspections of units are always an issue, and HUD is looking at what they classify as major deficiencies versus minor deficiencies, and they actually have some new protocols that we're expecting later this year.
So one of the issues that AGLA has addressed with that is that if there is a minor violation on the first inspection, there's a delay in getting a second inspection after a repair is made, instead of being able to make a repair right on the spot, for example, and being able to get up and running right away. Is that something that is within the authority of the housing authority to be able to address?
Well, where we can, if it's a minor deficiency that the landlord can correct right then, the inspector will stay and, potentially pass the unit if it's corrected. However, it's going to take a couple hours or so. They're each doing around 18 inspections a day, and so they can't necessarily wait for a landlord to make corrections.
Okay. That is, I think, a real legitimate concern, and it is something that we can fix. We can figure out a solution to that to address this. So I think that kind of covers some of the points that I wanted to talk about, Mr. Chairman. But I do think that one of the things that we haven't discussed at all is enforceability and what budgetary requirements there will be to implement this, and how best to govern the enforceability component, who's going to do that. And I think there also needs to be obviously a period of time prior to implementation to allow outreach, education, and so on within the housing community generally. So I would certainly be supportive of that. I don't know if my colleagues have questions, but I have a proposal. Mr. Harris-Dawson, I think.
No, I'm good for now.
Okay. What I'd like to ask, Mr. Chair, if we could, is to hold this item in committee and ask the CLA to come back with some additional recommendations in consultation with staff. I'd like to have some recommendations on implementation and enforcement, how that will be governed and implemented, and what, if we can determine a staff and budgetary resource allocation for that, that would be important to understand. I'd also like to have recommendations for an outreach and education plan, how long that might be appropriate to go on, and what kind of delayed implementation we might include. And then I'd also like to, and I don't know that this needs to be done in 30 days, but I would also like to have the flip side of this too. We're talking about a prohibition on source of income discrimination, but I think we have to be equally aggressive about figuring out how we incentivize greater engagement by the housing industry to incentivize more people wanting to take vouchers, and how we make it easier for them to do so. If we're not doing both, I think we're not going to be as successful as we should be. So I'd also like the CLA to come back with a report on ways to incentivize owner participation with housing vouchers, maybe similar to the county's homeless incentive program, and also to reduce the landlord burden of relating to vouchers and delays related to vouchers. So if we can have those recommendations back, I think we can address the problem from both the carrot and the stick side, and we'll be much more apt to be successful.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank Mr. Krikorian for the discussion and the panel and those who testified today on this matter. And it just seems to me, I don't have a specific recommendation on this, that there have been times in very recent history where landlords actually competed with each other for tenants with vouchers in very recent history. And now we have the opposite situation. And it just strikes me that the data is available, like it's widely known. Everybody nodded when we said that. And it just strikes me that it doesn't seem like we have the tools to adjust to the real environment as the real environment changes. Because we know it's going to change. The situation we have now will be different 5 years from now. We don't know how different, in what way it'll be different. We know it will be different. And it just seems like if we have a situation where we respond 4 or 5 years after conditions have changed, by the time we get the change in place, it'll be a moot point. And so I just would put to you all, for those of you who have vast expertise in this matter, just thinking about how, as policymakers, we can put the city in the position to adjust more quickly. And, you know, in this case, adjust before there are 50,000 people living on the street, as opposed to waiting until that and then figuring something out.
Let me add that there are some cities that are doing better than us. note Washington DC, Newark, et cetera. We should look for best practices. I'm not quite sure we need to wait for the outreach to go forward, but we could figure that out. It could be concurrent. And the other thing is, this has been brought to our attention and continues to be a real issue for us, is the cost of recycla. Or done in a abstract, done in their own silo, without any particular attention to affordable housing, nonprofit housing, et cetera, what happens in our mixed income. That needs to be reevaluated and addressed, because it's creating problems that were unanticipated. I'll say that. That's it. Clear?
All right.
Is this good? Wait, how many days? 30?
You know, for the sake of discussion, let's say 30. I recognize that that's aggressive. If there's, we can't have it back within 30, I will understand, but I'd like us to shoot for moving this quickly. So.
Okay. So be the order?
Concur.
Thank you. Clear?
Thank you.
Is the docket clear?
That's clear.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Second.
So be the order.
Good job, Jules.
Thank you.